institutions. These guys should have an excellent, informative presentation lined up for all of you. We would ask that you hold your questions till the end of the panel. There will be time for questions, but we are holding them till the end. And with that said, I am going to kick it over to these guys, let them make their introductions, and take it away.
Okay, great. All right, great. My name is Lindsay Grace. I'll do the first sort of just overview presentation so everybody sort of knows where I'm coming from. So I'm an associate professor at American University, and that's sort of my in on this. You always sort of want to know who I am, so nice and quickly. I've been teaching games since 2003, and I'm the director of the Games Initiative at American University. I also direct the Persuasive Play Studio there, where I do a lot of work in serious games. I'm the former director of Miami University's Games Center, which was a top-ranked games program, so I have perspective from multiple places. And some of the clients that I worked with included Tarot International and the Columbus Museum of Art when I was working at Miami University. So the first question is always sort of why do we even bother making serious games? And I have a couple of thoughts. The first is that academies, institutions, are really excited about the idea of seeing purpose and play married. Okay? The second, and you can see a lot of examples of this, so Games Learning Society is a good conference that tries to do this. We've got things like the annual Games for Change Awards. We have the International Serious Play Awards. We have the Serious Game Awards. What you're seeing is we have a lot of awards to help people feel good about making serious games. And they keep going on and on. And then we also have this fact that academics really like taking, or can take risks that institutions can't, that industry can't. So a good example is, have any of you guys heard of La Mole Industria? They do some really interesting They do some really interesting games. One of my favorites is their McDonald's game, where you start asking very difficult questions, and yes, that is supposed to look like blood, about running a large-scale corporate franchise. And we also, part of it is that academics can do a lot of things that don't necessarily produce money. And so we can do these sorts of risks. Has anyone ever heard of September 12th? A few of you, cool. This game is basically a reflection on violence begetting violence. So it's a sort of argument against an eye for an eye. What happens in this game is that as you see people around, you will see a terrorist. If you see a terrorist, you can fire a missile at them. If you fire a missile at them, the result is that you produced more terrorists. So you've killed one and produced 3. So it's an unwinnable game. More of a toy, actually. And we've had some successes. So academics have pioneered, in some ways, this sense of succeeding in serious games through grants and partnerships. So you've probably heard of the National Science Foundation or MacArthur Foundation. These are institutions that have really supported serious games. But the question is always sort of, why isn't this easier? And part of that is because a lot of people who go to school don't dream of making the next serious game. It's not as though people at even 12 years old say, I'm going to make an awesome language learning game, right? And so they often think of this and they say, well, I want to make the next Grand Theft Auto, not You Make Me Sick, the game, which doesn't have the same appeal. They think of perhaps inventing the next Fez, not the next Fat World. And certainly not the next rock, paper, scissors. So one of the interesting things is that when you do serious games, you're always trying to balance business and government's needs with the schedules of academics. We move a little slower. So in this case, if you kind of looked at these two, the academic is the hare. The government organizations tend to take a while to approve grants, etc. But if you were to do yet another comparison, that's what industry looks like. So it's hard for us to keep pace, which is why we need signs like this. And part of the reason this sign is very apt is, realistically, we're teaching people at the same time we're trying to build these really cool products. And so we need to make sure that we support the bunnies that are growing up. So it's also very hard to communicate, especially when you're dealing with people outside of your institution. So they do communicate differently. Sometimes they use really archaic devices. And sometimes they just don't understand, no matter how loud you are. And then there's always some kind of fight, usually around something like ownership. Who owns the serious game you've made? So the question is sort of, how do we fix it? We ask a lot of questions. That's what a lot of academics do, just trying to understand how we can get better at this. We also learn to take risks. And we always have this sort of effort going forward, understanding that some of these games are going to work and some of them aren't. Examples of things I think have worked well. I think Jesse Schell's Shell Games at Carnegie Mellon has done a good job. And I think that these small indies, like Papers, Please, have done a really cool effort in the serious game space. And then just a shout out to two academics I think do a really great job. So Jane McGonigal and Ian Bogos both do a really good job of sort of filling that space of serious games. That's all I got.
Hi guys, my name is Chris Totten. I am assistant professor of game design at George Mason University, just around the Beltway a little bit. And so Lindsay talked quite a bit about teaching and sort of what students come in thinking when they come to a game program, and what we as the academics and the professors think when we're doing games in an academic setting. And so one thing that we've been doing at George Mason is we have a Serious Games Institute. We get client projects, basically people who are interested in creating serious games for research, and we have them come to us and we work with them to create the game or app that they want. And we have done this through our, a little bit about me beforehand. Again, Chris Totten, George Mason University. I'm a local independent game developer. I am on the steering committee for the local International Game Development Association, or IGDA. I have been teaching games and game-related things since about 2008. I have a master's degree in architecture from Catholic University, which is also local. And I use that to use that design knowledge to figure out how do we teach game design. Who in here is a game developer, even as a hobbyist? Okay, a couple people. You can tell people, you know, like, how hard is it to make a game? It's pretty difficult. Yes. How hard is it to release a game? Yeah, a lot of people have, like, kind of that sort of look. Who here has seen Indie Game the movie? Yeah, that's about right. You know, that's very true. So, you know, when we get into how to create games with other people, it's useful to figure out, like, okay, how do we teach all these things, but how do we also send the message both to clients and to our students, you know, what the realities of these are. So, you know, also while teaching design, this is the challenge. So I am in charge of the mobile game design class, which is our client-based game design course. So here's our learning outcomes that we hope to get. Be familiar with the process of mobile game development. Analyze mobile games to understand their gameplay mechanics, so more of a concentration on the actual platform. Utilize game mechanics to create persuasive or serious games. I'm reading out the slide. But the point being that there's a couple of goals evident here. So here we have the written learning outcomes, but the secret learning outcomes is that my goal, especially as an indie, as somebody who did not come up through a program for training, let's say AAA developers, is that it's useful to know how to make games on your own. Right now, the big opportunity is in a lot of these mobile or open platforms. You know, this year has been this past year saw the introduction of the micro console, for example. So there's lots of opportunities for people who are not working with EA or Activision to make games. So there's secret goal one. Another element is learning how to create persuasive games. Well, in this, you actually have an interesting game design challenge. It's not so much how do we create a serious game, it's how do we take a problem, and this is great because we work with clients, so they're coming to us with a problem. How do we take a problem and dissect it into a system that is a playable game? You know, so there's a lot of game design analysis that has to happen here. So 2 semester, looking at the past year of this, our fall semester from last year was mostly second year students, and Spring semester, we actually had a fair number of first and equal number of first and second year, and then we had a lot of third year students. So what I'm looking at here is also where do we place this in a curriculum, or in curricula? So in terms of methodologies, I like to use a constructivist method. So basically work on a game, play test the game, or show it to your client, form concepts of like why did they like it, why did they not like it, and then test, create a new iteration and test again. What we have clients do is they come to us with their game, we have them present to the students, and then we say, okay, students, you must make a game about, 2 semesters ago it was fighting underage drinking. Last semester, so spring semester, I guess this past semester was the fall, but spring semester last year was a game for people on probation, and then this past semester was a game for meditation. So basically we have weekly check-ins with the client where they present their game, and then the client gives them feedback, like, yes, this works, this doesn't work, this makes our argument, it does not make our argument. So I'm employing the way that we did things when I was studying architecture. You'd have a building that you'd want to create. So one semester they might say, you're going to build a hotel on, and here's the map of the site in Barcelona. Okay? So you'd have to figure out what kind of hotel you're going to make. And you'd get up every Friday, you'd have a pinup, and you'd put your stuff on the wall, and you'd say, okay, here's my building, and you'd get feedback on it, and then you'd kind of go through this cycle until the final presentation. This is what we do with games. Now, what's nice with clients with this is that it's difficult to tell a game design student, go make a game. They'll try to make Skyrim a lot of times. They'll try to make GTA 5. They'll try to make something huge because I play this is what I like, and really games can't be that hard, right? So you take something like this, make meditation into a game on this device, there's your design problem. So you learn by iterating. You learn what works, what doesn't work, and you can test your knowledge of, your practical knowledge of the software you learn, but also your design knowledge, sort of the soft skills of how do I take meditation and dissect it into a set of game mechanics. So I also tried 2 different methodologies here, case-by-case software help in Unity in the fall, so a little less dictated work with the Unity game engine. Client project began immediately, so this was sort of like, here's your client, go. Spring semester, I took the first half of the course, made it sort of, we're going to play a couple games every week, and we're going to learn about design, while we also learn about making things in game engines, and then second half of the semester is the client. It sounds, so here's what we came up with, a couple projects. So here's the fall projects. This is an endless runner where this was the underage drinking semester. This was like endless runner, the good stuff is the healthy food, the bad stuff is the alcohol, and there's trivia questions at the end. And then this one is sort of a peer pressure game. So if anybody has ever played Phage Wars online, this was basically Phage Wars with the topic of peer pressure. So then here's the spring semester. This was a game called Onward. Some students created a role-playing game to give people on probation missions to go out in the real world and perform helpful tasks. So, one of your missions, if you were found to have trouble with keeping employment, your missions were focused around, you would give you missions related to, okay, we're going to work on your resume today. Did you work on your resume? Tap it in. And then what I thought was really neat was that then they, the points you got from achieving or completing these quests were you could buy things that would help you in actual video game environments. So you had a mini game along the real world game to play. So it kind of incentivized through in-game and out-of-game feedback. And then we had another one that was a little more gamified, dirty word, gamification. but the goal was to create a lighter game experience. So this one was more moving along a board. Every day is a different place on the board, kind of like Candyland. And then every day you'd get 3 missions. What are your goals for the day? Did you complete them? And then you can exchange them for prizes. So light game, or more gamified, but it actually was found to appeal to a little older audience that didn't want to actually do the video game. So what did we find from this? Software tutorials, have more of them. Have people that know software better. Even better yet, if you have people coming in, it was a 200 level class. To be honest, originally I thought that that was just a catalog number designation. It was actually sophomores for, as you saw, the fall semester. It's useful to have people who know the software already. That way you can jump in easier, especially with clients. Course structure, it sounds harder to do a client project with half a semester, but if they know the design, it's actually easier for them to get to the root of the game design analysis problem. And then again, have it a little later. If anybody here is from an academic institution who is looking at stuff like this, try to have it during a 3rd or 4th year project. Studio culture. The other hidden aspect of the studio culture is, let's say, Lindsay has a bad, I'm going to pick on you. Let's say he has a really terrible bit of feedback from the client. And the client,
Never happens.
Never happens, ever. And my presentation is right after his. So I might be like, ooh, he said this term, and it didn't work out. Well, I was going to say that term, so now I'm not going to say that term. It sounds sneaky, but really what this turns into is you create a group knowledge base of what the client wants. So I always tell my students, pay attention to other people's presentations because you actually may learn something about what the client wants that they didn't say directly. So it creates this group design culture. And then what I'm going to do coming up, so future work, studies of how do you turn this into a role-playing game. So how do we gamify game production? And really that's what this is about. It's using defined serious games, not only to further our own academic research pursuits, but also figure out how do we teach people games in a structured environment. And that's all from me, so thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Solomon. I'm a professor at Montgomery College in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is a community college, so it's a little bit different from these other guys. We have freshmen and sophomores only. It's 2-year school. And then my students graduate and go on to these other schools. So I have more beginner students, think of it that way. But I also have people returning to get another degree, and it's a very, very, very student body. So my background is I co-created the program at Montgomery College, the Computer Framing and Simulation program. I've been teaching there in the gaming program since 2003. And I produce and design educational games created by the Montgomery College students for NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So they're the people who do hurricane monitoring, how clean is the ocean, that kind of stuff. And I also research, write, and I'm a practitioner of game schooling, which is homeschooling using games, educational games and entertainment games, which have an educational benefit. And the character at the top right, the Oracle, is a turtle from one of the games that we did for NOAA. You can see she has the globe, the Earth on her back, one of my favorite characters that we created. So some of the serious game projects we've worked on, the site on the right is the NOAA Planet Arcade, which features a lot of the games that we did for NOAA. One about sea turtles and helping them get to their nesting area. These are games designed for middle school students. Another one with Oscar the Otter there, again for middle school students, about health in estuary environments, which are areas like the Chesapeake Bay where the rivers meet the seas and how important they are to them. On the top right, which is a mobile location-based game an extra game. I don't know if you guys have played Zombies Run or any of those kinds of games that are designed to help you maintain an exercise program or get more exercise. So this was a game that we did based on the Montgomery College campus, using the new Montgomery College mascot, the Raptor, and people had to go around campus and talk to virtual professors and capture the Raptors, and a fun little game. That was a class project from last semester. And then we have some mobile games. There's one there from an Android game that is designed to teach young children who may be going into the hospital for the first time, like getting a treatment, what the hospital environment is about, what all the machines are, trying to make it less scary for kids. So those are some of the serious games we've done. And some of the non-serious games, I just put these in for fun. I figured there'd be people dressed up here. We do live action role-play games. So these aren't theater performances. These are actual live games where the outcome is uncertain. And you can see at the bottom we did Donkey Kong. They're all our Marios because we have to have 3 taking each turn. Each one had a life. We did Hack MC, where we turned the entire campus. If you look at it top down, it looks just like the Pac-Man maze. So we ran around the campus to see if the ghosts would capture Pac-Man or vice versa. And then we did Zelda. And Zelda was my favorite because of the ears. If you can see the ear on the link there, we had a real makeup artist come out and do little pointy ears. So that was a lot of fun. Not really related to serious games, but fun. Okay, so some benefits of doing serious games within an academic environment, and particularly the ones that we did for a federal agency like NOAA. So NOAA is like the old Turbo, right, before he got superpowered. Federal agencies are very slow, they're very bureaucratic. They have a lot of restrictions on hiring and projects. They can't really turn on a dime, they can't move fast. So the benefit of working with the college was we could hire who we needed to hire, we could, if something wasn't working out, we could end that relationship. Some students didn't do their job, got fired from the project. We didn't have to go through a whole bunch of paperwork that a federal agency would have to go through to manage those sorts of situations. We had the new technology, and the capability that they really didn't have. They had all the scientific knowledge, but no idea how to present that to kids in a way that would be fun. The benefit for students, students are like the new Turbo, fast, energetic, enthusiastic, but lacking experience, lacking maybe commitment and accountability and experience working on a long-term team project, the sort of soft skills that are necessary in the workplace. So they get the benefit of working on those long-term projects, getting something for their resume, getting paid, because whenever possible I try to make sure that the students are paid. I don't like to have students working for free. I don't think that's fair in most situations. So I try to find funded projects. Developing leadership, so we have students who will become the leads on the projects, and lead designer, lead art, lead music, and so on. And then there's also a benefit for the college, because we have to stay current with the new technology, and this kind of pushes us to be moving faster and developing our own internal expertise. Some challenges involved in doing projects with outside agencies or companies. Finding funded projects. So we get all kinds of requests to do, oh, can you do a game for me on this? Can you make a game for my business? And so on. The challenge is finding ones that are funded. And then also finding partners who are knowledgeable about it. It's not just students who will want to create Skyrim as their first projects. I mean, I've had clients ask me to create an MMO with my students. It's not going to happen in a semester. So you really want clients who understand what games are about and what you can achieve in a certain time frame with, a really pretty low budget. Managing scope, you'll get into a game and then suddenly, someone's boss will get involved, and then they'll want to add 10 things in the kitchen sink. So that has to be managed. There's a lot of bureaucracy. One of the first NOAA game that we did, the one about the estuaries, we had a situation where in the game was published, it was done. And in the beginning of the game, we had the mother of the main character in the hospital sick from eating bad shellfish. The seafood industry lobby contacted NOAA and made us change that. But we were out of budget to make it make sense in any way. So now when you play the game, the character's mother is in the hospital, but we've taken all the lines out about bad shellfish. So it's just kind of depressing. Why do you start the game off with the mom in the hospital? So the politics were very interesting. And there are college politics also. That's a whole other business. Working with students. So students are very busy, very challenged. Community college students are often working full-time, going to school full-time. Often they have their own kids and family, or they're taking care of elderly parents. They have a lot going on. And sometimes they're also just flaky. I mean, they don't show up. They're really excited at first, and then, after you get into the hard work of making a game, they're like, oh, this is hard, and they disappear. So that's always a challenge. You have to communicate really clearly about your expectations, responsibilities, and who owns the IP. So who owns the project? It's pretty clear in a funded game for an agency, but it becomes less clear in group class games, for example. But Montgomery College doesn't claim ownership of those kinds of in-class games. Some schools, they will claim ownership of any work that students do in class, but Montgomery College doesn't. I'm not speaking for Montgomery College, by the way. So I'm not giving legal advice here. Quality control. So students have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, but are also inexperienced, make mistakes, and sometimes plagiarize and cheat. We had one student who was responsible for a mini game on one of our projects, and he copied a game from the internet and changed some colors and submitted it. And it wasn't until a few weeks later that we realized this was just entirely copied from something online. So there are issues like that I guess can come up in any environment that are particularly prone to come up in a college environment. And then there's drama. So if you're working with a group of people for some of these projects were semesters, some were a year, some a year and a half. There's relationship drama. There's people getting fired from project drama. We had, I won't go into the details, but we had a lot of drama on one of our projects in particular, and it was kind of like a reality show by the end. And then some issues or questions that I've been thinking about with these projects. We do everything very informally and kind of under the radar at Montgomery College, at least when I do projects, because it's easier, there's less bureaucracy, there's less forms, there's less people who have to sign up about things if I just kind of do them. So I'm interested for those of you who have, we have a Serious Games Institute, and those of you who are doing it in a more formal or structured or incubator, nonprofit kind of way, what your experience has been with that. And then working effectively with other disciplines, I often want to let's bring in the English department and have them help with writing. Let's bring in the music department and have them do sound. I actually had a lot of professors contribute language translations on one of our games, and that was a really cool experience. And one person did a lolcat translation, so that was pretty interesting. But that can also turn into too many cooks in the kitchen, when you have too many different disciplines involved and professors involved and deans of those professors involved. So there's a balance there. And then managing scope and expectations, I talked about that a little bit before. And ending projects positively. We had one experience with a client who was referred by my doctor, had a group of people who wanted to create a game, and we met with them and started the process, and then they couldn't deliver the content. So I had all the students ready to go to create their game, but they couldn't get us the content, which was very specific to what they needed to do. And so chance to do that in a positive way without hurting people's feelings. So I think that's about it. And if you guys want to contact me or learn more about the program, studygaming.com is the best way to find out.
So I guess it's my turn. My name is Sujan Shrestha. I'm assistant professor at the University of Baltimore in simulation and digital entertainment. I mean, I think we all share the similar approach to teaching in all different varieties. I think all our students, if you're in an academic setting in a game development program, you will have to develop games no matter where you go. But for this presentation, I thought about something that my students are working on currently as a project as well. In a larger setting called Images and Imagination. I started this project a couple of years ago with the Husband Center for Center for Adults with Autism at Towson University. And so it's a continued project with more as a study group into the game development platform. How do we design and how do we solve the real world problem? And so I have undergraduate and graduate students actually working in this particular project currently. And so the whole purpose with this, the development of this project is just a collaboration between adults with autism and university students. Primarily, that was the first focus. I wanted to see how pure mentoring model works. That was the primary. As we all know, if you go to the university, you probably will have game development happening in a group set. But in this particular one, we have a group of 15 adults with autism and another 15 group of students that's actually is neurotypical. So we created this interesting dynamic of two groups and see how those fosters and go from there. So we have and one of the interesting things we're starting finding with this piece is a lot of things is we're more connected to the community with this project rather than just for the students. So it's just not providing space for students and adults with autism, but also we're connected to parents, people around the community. We had a show actually put in at the Veterans Art Center, Veterans Center at downtown Baltimore 2 years ago with the student works. But here I'm just actually presenting just the strategy part. So we have done about 3 workshops, about 15 to 15 ratio, that's about 45 to 45 equals. And we have certain goals I emphasize on this piece. By the way, I actually presented this piece as a lot of the findings in the national conference at the School of Mental Health this October too. So if you want more information on this. So we have a lot of things from the college environment and the student environment. One of the things we found that there is a growing population of autism in the college environment as well, but we just don't know how to work with them in a different in a classroom environment. So we created this program just to specifically understand and work with this population, but also students. One of the really interesting thing is, like, we all know autism, we all know how it works, we have seen people reacting and acting to it, but at the same time, when we're dealing in a very close environment, we just didn't know how actually people work with one another. So that was one primary function. We looked at a lot of the long-term benefits on this, not only just to assist youth in the autism spectrum in a lifelong skill, but also to prepare workforce, because we were, one of the primary objectives in this development was about 90% of autism population is unemployed. So we were looking at that as the trajectory, how we can develop that a lifelong skill set. And the other part for me was, I'm also an artist and animator as well. So I'm looking from more as a motor skill perspective and perceptual cognition, see how these things changes over time. And we've seen significant development when we do these workshops. I'm just going to build up some objectives here for this particular project that we have developed. Some of these are perceptual and motor challenges that we are looking into, and hopefully we'll study more into this. So we go from drawing table to paper pencils to computers to all different strategies. There's not one single strategy I use. So in half of the workshop, if it's 16 weeks, 4 weeks I'll develop one single, and then 4 weeks another one, and see just how these things work. And hopefully that will give us some I like that sound. It's kind of a good break during the presentation. And also, also by developing designs through collaborative strategies. And so one of the things we are doing is identifying, developing visual learning activities. We are creating self-awareness and self-participation in this because people are just really interested once you get used to it. How many people are used to working with autistic population? Autism here. Okay, so it is interesting to see how it works out for the first time when you interact with this group. So we're also looking at the sensory, observation, and imagination. We're teaching them how to understand time, space, and motion. And there is a reinforcement to go. So one of the things that we found that a lot of time we focus on mostly communication behavior, but what we are looking at here is the motion or motor skill behavior. That's where our primary focus is. And so students here, these are some of the pictures that I found through the workshop. Students are working together. You can see it's a random set of events going from pencil papers to presenting. One of the things that was really interesting was people were not very interested in talking. I started this 4 weeks, 5 weeks of sessions. They have to present their work every time they do. And so the first two weeks is very difficult for them to come up in the front and actually present. But slowly that changes over time is they're actually really engaged in presentation. They're really interested in the part of being a part of the group. And so as we're doing this, we're also studying how are they interacting with space, how interacting with objects, what are they doing with the paper and pencil, what kind of motions they're developing. And sometimes we do the pairing as well. So there's a pair of group students, one student from the university, other one from the autism center. And this is my favorite picture actually. And this is what you get, friendship. I'm still friends with a lot of these kids that I work with. They still talk to me and work with me outside the workshop group. So what worked, right? So one of the biggest thing about this project is solving the real world problem, looking at the scenario and going into that particular scenario and understanding when you are into someone's shoes, how does it feel? Not from just one perspective, but from both perspectives. That is the biggest challenge. And I think being in the serious gaming industry, looking at that is the biggest factor. You want to go in there and understand what the problems are. And so one of the things that we actually focus on is the peer mentoring, like I mentioned previously, is it works really great for us, at least in this particular set. Somehow it has worked beautifully. And this also has created a lot of the community research and practices for us. We have developed a large amount of community outreaches from this program all over the Baltimore area. But it also provided education support for students. It's amazing how after a session ends, a workshop ends, at the end of this workshop, student will say, I had no idea how these things were worked out. We were always worried about all these things, and now I'm at least aware of how people interact in certain scenarios, and I can deal with it. And developing relationship, of course, we looked at we are also, collaborative strategies, observation, imagination, right? So all these things but there are a lot of things that didn't work either. I'm not going to name it because what didn't work, I'm still making a pilot list of what didn't work from this. There's definitely a lot of things hasn't worked also. But there are always problems, like Deborah mentioned, everybody else mentioned. Working in this serious gaming is also, there are always bureaucratic nightmares. That is always going to exist. And so there's administrative nightmares where you have to go through a lot of issues and things that you never kind of come with it. At least for me, that was a lot of the learning part of it. So with that, please contact me. This is my contact information. And if you have any questions and you want to learn about this particular project, and I'll give it to Brett.
I'm actually going to move down.
All right, hello everyone. I am batting cleanup here. My name is Greg Walsh.
I kind of interpreted this line a lot different. It was very busy when I got this first email, so I may have interpreted what my presentation is about to be slightly different than everyone else did. But I decided to take the point of view of the role of academic institutions and their relationship to the gaming industry. And the way that I thought about this was that, in reality, also just to clarify, I'm a professor at the University of Baltimore with Sujan. I've been teaching for like 13 years. The first 10 years were exclusively grad school, and the last couple years I've been teaching undergrads. So a lot of my newly found working with undergrads has informed this presentation. How many of you are in college? Great. How many of you have gone to college? How many of you will go to college? Okay, great. So we're all on the same level here. I was born at a very early age in the 70s, so my college experience and your college experience may be different. So, what is the role of academic institutions with the gaming industry? It is a balancing act. When we work as academic institutions and we work with the gaming industry and we try and have people study video games, game studies, what we're doing is definitely a balancing act. So I've come up with 5 facts that really are very much opinions, and they're also discussion points for, because we want to talk here as well. This is not just us talking at you. I want to talk with you. So the first one is that you are not in college to get a job. That is what I'm putting that out there as a fact. Do you see the picture up there? Anyone can tell me what they are?
Mosaic?
It's a mosaic. Well, what is it? There's a gladiator, and then there's like a Roman dude. So liberal, what's that?
Technically, the gladiator is probably Roman dead.
Yeah, okay. Let's put it this way. There's a free Roman and there is a servant or slave in the thing. The term liberal arts for college, have you heard that phrase before? So liberal arts was education for people who were free, who were not going to take a particular job. Which means that if you wanted a particular job, you were a servant or you were a slave and you had a trade. So that's what happened back in Roman times. That's where the phrase liberal arts came from, is it was for people who were free and wanted general education to be a better person. As an educator, that's one of the goals that we have to balance. Because you really do want a job when you graduate from college, correct? Right? We all like that. We like money. Money is good. And so we want to have jobs. So that is definitely one key balancing act that we have to do. We have to make sure that you get exposed to all kinds of things, as well as learn parts of the trade that you're interested in. A subset of this is that I do not work for you or your parents. Yes, it's true. I have had students actually say to me things like, well, I'm paying your salary. It's like, well, technically, no, you're not. I work for the University of Baltimore. I actually am paid by the state of Maryland in order to help you be a better citizen of Maryland. That's why you get a cheaper rate at a state institution, because the state is helping make you a better citizen of that state. I work for them. Just because your parents are paying for your tuition does not make them my employer, nor should they be able to yell at me about your grade. I've had that too. Secondly, part of that is you are here to learn how to learn. I am not here to teach you how to use Unity. I will teach you how to use Unity. I will teach you how to program what an object is, what object-oriented programming is, but that should not be your end goal. You are not, again, coming to college to get a trade. You're coming to be a better person and learn some skills along the way. You should be learning about computer languages, about what are they generally, like what's an object, what is a variable, so that instead of being forced to always use Java, you can go on to other computer languages and understand what that means. What's a loop, what's a concept, all those kind of things. That's why you're at college. That should be the thing you should be taking away. The future is multimedia. So if you're not old, you don't get this reference. And that is that in the late 90s, everything was multimedia. The future is multimedia. We're going to do multimedia. It's going to rule the world. Everything is multimedia. Well, you can take 1997 and replace the word multimedia with games today, and you get the same kind of exuberance that you see. Things change. This is a lot of references to a software program called Macromedia Director. Macromedia went on to make this little tiny program called Flash, you may have heard of. But the director people who paid $1,000 a license, they were like, whatever, that's not going to be big at all. Nobody wants to have a silly vector graphics program on their computer. And we all know what happened with that. And now what's happened with Flash, right? It's gone too, in a way, kind of. Depends who you ask. But the point is that things are going to constantly change. And if you only learn that one thing that I taught you in class, you're not going to be ready for that change in 5 years. Okay? The next statement is, you are not a unique snowflake. Why do I say that? Well, that's part of the balancing act. So those other two things were just things to deal with. We have to deal with teaching you important exact things as well as general concepts. You're not a unique snowflake. What does that mean? Well, that means that no matter how awesome you were at the thing you do, there are 1,000 people like you, and they really are. I mean, you are a special person. You know, you're alive. It's such a wonderful feeling that you're happy inside. But at the same time, you have to understand that there are going to be a ton of people vying for you.
Doesn't this contrast your first statement about you're here to better yourself as a person, not to get traded?
No, it doesn't contrast it. It's that you're here to better yourself, but at the same time, there's a lot of people bettering themselves as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's a group thing. What I'm saying is, you're not a unique snow. It was for discussion anyway. So we see a lot of people, but the balance to that is we want to make sure that people are nurtured in a college environment. We want to make sure that you are getting the best out of what you're doing. We want to make sure that when the feedback you're getting, the kind of projects you're doing, these are helping you achieve the goals that you want for yourself. And then finally, your interests are not everyone's. This is Earth as the center. This is the Ptolemaic celestial map. Lindsay talked about people, and Debbie talked about where a lot of times people want to build Grand Theft Auto 5. Well, not everyone loves Grand Theft Auto 5. The money right now is not in Grand Theft Auto 5 type games unless you're Rockstar, right? The money is in Facebook games. The money is in mobile games. The money is in portable games. The money is mining Bitcoin with your extra GPU processes in your basement, right? That's where the money is. The point is that as a game developer in a college program, as an academic institution, we need to balance that you need to see other types of games. We need to make you build other types of games that you're not comfortable with. In my Intro to Game Development class, I make my students every semester, they have 3 topics they have to choose. This year, the topics were Teddy Roosevelt, sailing, and Gustav Holst the planets. They had to make a game about those 3 things. And yeah, so maybe you don't want to sign up for my class. But the point is that you have to step out of your comfort zone. Not everyone wants to play first-person shooters. Not everyone wants to play Farmville or Cowclicker or whatever it is that you want to do. And then finally, success comes after work. I have been mining coins in my basement, so that's where all the imagery is coming from. It's great that you are a good designer. It is really great. I'm happy. I'm happy that you are good at leading people. But the thing is, as a new graduate, as someone coming into college, you have to understand that you will need to work if you want to go into this industry. And by work, it's not, I'm going to go work, be senior lead designer on my first day. Right? It's, I'm going to go in and I'm going to play test. I'm going to do something like that. I might have to get coffee. I might have to do all kinds of things that everyone told me I was never going to have to do, but I might have to, or I will have to, because success only comes after work. If you want to build your own games, we've all seen from the indie game film, we know that it takes a lot of work to get that one big hit, right? Even, what's their faces with the Angry Birds? Rovio, thank you. It took them 10 years to be an overnight success, right? So that's the thing. You have to understand. So success comes after work. In all honesty, that is my whole presentation to try and spark conversation. I believe now that we'll open the floor to questions. Is that correct?
Can I get those slides for the first day of the next semester?
Yeah, right.
I'll just come in and yell at your class.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Got questions on, please, assault them.
Hello, we're here in the front.
Speaking about serious games, and there's a college student who is majoring like in the communications and writing and such. Someone like myself who is trying to be a writer, how do you somehow write for serious games? How can I really get involved in that? Because I'm not really good at programming and such. So how about writing for serious games? Because I think the September 12th thing looks very interesting, and narrative and such.
So that's actually a really great question, because this comes up in my mobile class a lot. So Now I can say the real stuff. So Debbie, all those problems, yes, I have had all of them. And you know, I mentioned it being a 200-level course. What happens, and this relates to your question about being a writer, is because it's a 200-level course, it's actually also open to minors. And what will happen is I'll have somebody take my 101 class, and that's a general education course. They'll be like, hey, this was fun. What other classes can I take? And 232 happens to be one of them. Well, you're making a game in that. And if you're coming in as somebody who may not have had the foundational stuff in Photoshop and coding and game engines and things like that, we run into that a lot. Like, well, I can write. What's great about serious games and writing is that they inevitably have a rhetoric, because they are these things where you are trying to make an argument. So there is usually, the writers are always the people that I try to make work most closely with our clients, because they're going to be the ones that are taking the client's essentially arguments, the pieces of the system that we have to turn into a game, and making them apparent in the game to the player. Because if you have a guy who's working on the art and a guy who's working on the mechanics, sometimes the actual language gets muddled. So actually, serious games, in my opinion, are a really great avenue for writers.
I'll give you another example. So there's a couple ways to look at the question. The first is to say, why do you need to know programming to create a game at all? And I'd want to underscore that. I've been teaching long enough to know that it's not necessarily that you need to sit through 3 semesters of C# to make your game. I want to underscore that because people forget that. One of my star students from Miami created a game called Don't Kill the Cow, and a couple of these small little indies, used Game Jolt, and did a really good job, and he was an English major with no programming experience. Game Salad, Game Maker, those products are there to fill that gap. The other way to look at it is also understand that your skill set as a writer can be used in things like alternate reality games and LARPs. I've seen a lot of students succeed in practicing game design without necessarily worrying about the technical end. And I think there's a lot of growth in that space. And I think those are the ways, if you're really interested in doing more game work, start there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and one last thing to add to that, there's a lot of, I'm going to call it confusion, but there's a lot of insistence that, and it's very easy to like sell this to people, like, well, oh, we have a game degree, it's a tech degree. Tech degrees are hot. You know, mobile games are hot. So social media games are hot. Buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. But yeah, non-digital games. Like, has anybody here heard of or played the metagame? It's a game. Okay, we got one.
It's awesome.
Okay, yeah, it's a game about talking about games that you play at an event like this. I actually should bring my deck of cards and challenge some people to it. But it's cards. You carry 5 cards around you, and it's a non-digital game that you play in public spaces. But you know, nobody says that game design has to be totally digital.
Yeah.
How do you take the role of academia in gaming and take it out of the classroom to get people who can't go to college or have already graduated?
So how do you take learning about games to people who can't necessarily come into a college, traditional college?
Right, and post-college.
Right, and post-college. So, I mean, there's a couple different ways. So Debbie's program at the community college, you know, is great for people that want to take that. And if you want an informal thing, if you're at a MOOCs, right, massively online, open classrooms, they're a great place. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of just, I mean, it sounds so silly. You could probably talk to your local librarian about books that they can recommend for you. But that's really it. It's so many people who come and are successful at games. Were successful at games because they did stuff outside of classroom anyway. And it was something they were interested in. It was something they got books. They watched movies. They did these things. They watched YouTube videos. I mean, so many of my students learn things from YouTube videos about gaming. That's insane. So that would be my...
Well, here's an interesting question for the panel then. Raise your hand if you have a degree in games or game design. And it says that on your diploma. There you go. No, this is, I think, one of the best things about gaming as an academic practice right now, and also the thing that scares me the most, not for now, but for the future, is that right now, nobody who's in this really has a degree in it. We all come from a lot of different backgrounds. And that affords opportunities to people like, I mean, I started doing this after I got out of grad school for architecture. Nobody was building anything at the time, so I'm like, hey, I know how to 3D model, you know, let me do some stuff, and then let me read a bunch of books, and then let me do some blogging, and then, oh hey, I happen to be, you know, suddenly I'm teaching at a university. Oops. Oops, yeah. No, but that's how it works. You know, you really, I mean, it's that success after work, and you're here to learn how to learn things. If you know how to learn, you can go and, I mean, I like to tell my students that the game industry is like a house with a really well-guarded and locked front door, like 20 locks, a moat, some bears, some barbed wire, but all the windows are open. So go, and the back door is wide open, so just go hop in one of the windows or in the back door. I mean, anybody can have a blog on Gamma Sutra. There's tons of Game Salad, Game Maker, Construct2, Stencil. There's lots of things that you can use to make games. Really, we just need to have a public reading of it. If anybody's ever heard of Anna Antropy, her book. It's basically like, raw, go make games.
And to that end, actually, the community is there, especially on the indie side, and a lot of this history, I mean, I really cautiously want to refrain from saying serious games, because there's a lot of us academics who absolutely hate that term. I'm one of them. But the short answer is, there are plenty of communities that will foster that kind of growth. And if you go out into the world and you say, here, I'm trying to make something that will make life better, your learning process better, help you understand someone else's perspective, very few people are going to look at you and say, oh, one of those again. Instead, it's more sort of like, okay, great, how can we make this happen? So I take that opportunity and work with community.
If you or anybody in this room is local and you want to figure out how to get into games and game academia stuff, come talk to me afterward. I'll give you my card and I can hook you up with the local IGDA.
It's a question.
Yeah, there was the girl in the pink that's had her hand up quite a while too. So you.
So you kind of talked about this a little bit, I guess. I just wanted to know if you guys could actually like define serious games.
That was my question.
Yeah, because right now, with all this information, it seems like it does something.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat no, okay? And this is good, this is great, this is actually the kind of discussion we need to have. So this is what I do. I don't like the term serious games, and I think it'll help you understand why. I think one of the things that it does is that it undermines the value of play fundamentally. It's awkward to talk about other things like serious books, or serious poems. And so I think one of the things that is more apt and more appropriate, and the argument that I make, is that we have sort of subgenres, for lack of a better phrase, around games and games with a purpose. So the program that I've started at American University is largely focused on purpose-driven play, and and I emphasize play, not necessarily games. And it's also focused on persuasive play. We're going to have a persuasive play panel at some point during this weekend, so you can kind of learn more about that. But I think really what happens is we have one big useless term called serious games, and then we really do have all these other spaces that people are engaged in. I have little interest in the old edutainment, and that's something that used to be part of serious
Multimedia.
games. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Just one thing, it's like nonfiction. To me, the word serious games is the same as the word nonfiction.
Yeah. Well, and I think the trouble you get in with serious games and where we fall into traps, and this is where I use the same excuse that Debbie did when she's like, I'm not representing the institution necessarily at this point. Sometimes serious games gets boiled down into, we're going to go make this government simulation for training or something like that. Try to tell a class of undergrads that's what you're working on for a semester. Go. When we look at academic institutions' serious games, it's usually games for exploring a topic, games for persuasion, games for solving a problem. Again, I like the term nonfiction game because sometimes serious games gets into, we're going to go make a simulation for the Air Force. And,
And that sort of thing. Because you can have serious games to talk about serious issues, but still have like some module of entertainment.
Well, and this goes into any time you are, really the question is audiences.
I've run into this with people in my department, is I said video game in a meeting one time, and I got like, you can't say that. It's like, what? It's a video game. And then, but it's like, it's a computer game. I'm like, okay, so 1997, multimedia! You know, I'm gonna go play Jedi Knight then. Make it a CD-ROM. Yeah. Put on my Sugar Ray album. But and that's the thing, is like it gets into this weird terminology. So sometimes you go places and serious game is the thing. Sometimes you go places and gamification is the word. And you know, it really depends on who you're talking to. And again, sometimes I think that causes the definition to get really muddled.
I'm going to butt in for a second. Just practically, what do serious games include? We've been talking about education games and simulations, but the serious game field, or games for impact, or meaningful games, or persuasive games, or whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to call them, it also includes advert games, games for advertising. If you go to Nike's website, games made by politicians to sway you into a different direction, like a budget solver game. Extra games, games that are for exercise and physical fitness, or training doctors. So there are lots and lots of different games that aren't necessarily educational. So serious games, that term covers a lot broader area.
Go ahead. I don't know if this is off topic or anything, but earlier you mentioned, I can't remember your name, Miss Montgomery College, that you look for people to pay your students when they make games. And in situations like that, do you ever run across like the Facebook effect, where the person who wants you to develop the game wants everything to be wants to be involved in everything, so you don't like steal their idea and everything? And like, what I'm asking is, have you ever ran across where like the lawyers get involved in a situation like that?
Yeah. So here's an easy way to, I'm sorry, you were answering, sorry. So here's an easy thing, just think of it this way. So some people realize that they've got gold, or at least think they have gold before they do, and they really don't anyway. And anytime they think there's value, someone is going to say, can we get the lawyers involved? This is the second studio. The studio that I'm running at American is my second studio within an academic institution. The character of the academic institution has a lot to do with how many lawyers and how quickly the lawyers are involved. But generally, academic institutions are like any other entity. They see money and they're curious. So one way around it is often to say, I don't know if we're really going to make anything on this. There's less draw to it. I've done it. And then, realistically, this is why, as you can see from my slides, I'm really excited about the idea of just making the world a better place. And I'm less interested in making a whole lot of money. And so I'll do projects as a sort of, as an opposite. I'll do projects that I know are pro bono, because there's some homeless shelter that's just trying to get people to understand the plight of being homeless. And I don't feel right saying, it's going to be about 50 grand.
Yeah, we do the same thing. Usually what I do with my lab is we'll make something, and we say that from the beginning it belongs to everybody. Like from the beginning, we just say that we're just doing this in the public domain. Yep. So that because I work with kids, if the kids would go home and tell their parents, and the parents think they have, like, so one thing when I work with kids is their parents are very concerned that the kid will come with an idea that could make the parent a lot of money. Yeah. So I'm like, well, the kid can go, they can come home and tell you whatever they want. There's no non-disclosure agreements. They can do whatever. We're not going to make any money. The kids aren't going to make. No one's going to make money off of this. So just go. And I'm at a law school. I mean, like, my school is mostly a law school. So, hey, we try to keep them.
And I think it really has a lot to do with who is the person who is the contact for these projects. Because, I don't know about you guys, we've run into situations where you get whiff of a project is happening, and it comes to you, and it's like, wait, you promised what? We're going to do what and how long? So it's a question of who is your contact person, what is the discussion? I mean, for me, I try to get involved as soon as possible, because I'm like, here's the things we can do. And I mean, the tough thing is we've had a project every semester, and at 200 level, in that class I talked about, it ends with, I'd say, a glorified interactive slideshow that looks like a game. But that goes on to a project. Some projects the underage drinking projects, we're still working on those over a year later because the contract was massive. It was like, we'll do everything. Meanwhile, I've been involved in other things where I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to give you, and then it's going to be in your hands for you to, finish it with developers, with this company you say you want to start at this point. So it depends on what you do to talk to your clients or the people you're making games with. It's really important to set that in stone really early.
My background is a lawyer, so that's what instead of majoring in game design, which didn't exist when I was in law school, so I went to law school and practiced for 6 years. So I do approach things in a very legal manner. I've had students try to claim ownership of code, not just content. And I'm very careful to have an agreement up front if I'm running a project where it's very clearly spelled out who owns the IP, and also that students can't contribute IP that is owned by someone else. So like in a situation where I had a student copy a game from online, it's clearly spelled out in our agreement that they can't take other people's work and submit that. And also, they don't own a project that's funded and part of a college-run project. In the back.
One of my friends who's a lawyer. Say again?
Dukect is still the only one. That's not like a university standard approach.
That claims ownership of student work, or there are others. I think Art Institute.
I think like employer does. That everything you do while you're here.
You need to check individually with each school because many of them do claim ownership of student work, and many of them will say it's to protect the student from claims from other students, like if they work in a group project, and it's to protect them from different people in the group suing each other.
And it can go class by class too. I've had classes where it's been to our so Mason does not own the work. The students own the work that they do at Mason. We've had classes where that's been to their benefit, and they've gotten money and work out of it. And then we've had classes where it's like, oh my God, the students keep asking for this because they own the work. Why? So it goes project by project. I mean, that policy, I have a different opinion of it, whatever is going on that semester.
So one of my friends, who's a lawyer, not told me that never talk about a project if it's actually going to make it somewhere. Just be shut about it. And so with that in mind, we're going to close this conversation. If you have any questions, you can come in front and ask us or anybody in the panel. So thank you so much.